So South Africa lost 21,000 formal non-agricultural sector jobs in just the first quarter of this year.
Data from Statistics SA shows that trade was worst affected, followed by the business service industry.
The transport and construction sectors were also affected. The report has also revealed a significant decline in full-time employment over the period, with 24,000 positions lost.
Our part-time employment rose with 42,000 more positions, taking the overall total to 1.15 million in March.
These data surveys come out quite regularly, and they unfortunately very seldom give you good news. I mean, this is truly one of the real problems in South Africa. Many other problems actually come from the unemployment rate. I mean, it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And certainly you would think that we've got to somehow change the way we do things in the country, and that's everyone, to actually get that unemployment rate down. So, it's unfortunately very seldom that we actually see a good employment number.
Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks, joins us for more on the story tonight. The bad news, of course, Matthew, is that we see a significant loss of jobs in the formal sector, which, of course, means that these are people, by and large, who are considered to have what many would describe as decent work in this country. And when they lose jobs, the impact is even greater, because we know that they're often carrying the burden of families, communities.
Yeah. Look, it's quite depressing. Look, we could have feared it could have been worse, given the levels of load shedding, the level of cable theft, the huge problems facing Transnet and Eskom and so forth. But it has to be a wake-up call. We can't afford, this is the second quarter we're seeing unemployment increasing, even if it's by a relatively small amount of 0.02%. But in the broader scheme of things, it's a crisis to have an unemployment rate of over 42%. You can't sustain a society with 4 out of 10 people being unemployed. It's even higher for young people, at about 6 out of 10 people being unemployed. And we're in real danger of creating a permanent class of unemployed youth. So we hope this will be a wake-up call once again for government and even for the leadership of organized business too, that unemployment is our number one crisis as a country. We have to throw everything possible at it. And we don't think we continue to just simply walk along the same beaten path and somehow hope that miracles will happen and things will improve for the better. Unless you do the fundamental obstacles to growing the economy, to reducing unemployment, we're going to continue to have this crisis that one day is simply going to explode in our faces, like we saw the violence in July 2021. And we'll have no one to blame but ourselves. We have to act and treat this the same way we treated COVID-19, the same way we've treated other crises facing us. Unemployment is our number one ticking time bomb as a country.
The difficulty, Matthew, is that even when we see an uptake, let's say, of part-time work, in as much as that's welcomed, it really can't be celebrated, because you offset that against the loss of jobs, and it becomes, the impact of it really becomes null, because temporary work is exactly that, temporary.
Yeah. So what we saw with the decrease in full-time employment and the increase in part-time employment, and also the job losses, look like basically people are being swapped. The companies are struggling to sell their products, so they're retrenching workers. They're taking what used to be full-time jobs and replacing with part-time work. So that's a reflection of companies that have an economy in distress. So that's not a good thing. It's quite worrying. We had seen, though, last year, despite all of the challenges that the economy faced, we saw last year the economy was quite resilient. At each quarter, we saw unemployment falling by 1% last year. So it fell by 4%, from 46 to 42%. But I think what we're seeing now in the past 2 quarters is that progress from last year is being reversed. That because of load shedding, because of cable theft, because of the crisis facing our railway network, both at Transnet and Metro Rail, because of the challenges facing our ports, we're now seeing unemployment beginning to rise again. And I think for us, it's not that complicated what needs to be done. We know what needs to be done. We've got to give Eskom all the support it requires to end load shedding. We've seen some breathing space in the past 2 weeks, so can we accelerate that support? Because it'll be very reckless to simply think that we're getting out of the woods on the load shedding front, because it just simply takes 1 or 2 power stations to trip, then we're back into a crisis. We hope that you will see Koeberg and Madupi and Kusile coming back on grid full force in September and December this year to give us more breathing space. But we need to see much more support being given to Transnet, because it's critical the transit is fully operational, both in the freight rail and also in the ports, because that's going to lock thousands of jobs in the mining, the manufacturing, the agricultural sectors. It's also critical that government deals with the huge backlogs of about 5,000 mining applications by companies. If you can unlock that, that's going to bring significant investment to the mining sector, which is quite a jobs-intensive sector. But it also means that we have to be serious about fixing metro rail. Metro rail is key to transporting 10 million commuters, largely workers, in our urban centers. If that can be operational, then those companies in the cities can be productive. But it also means that we need to find out where exactly is COGTA and STALGA, and see what support can be given, including from Treasury, to our rural municipalities, which are often so dysfunctional, and also urban municipalities too, that they fail to provide basic services like water, sanitation, electricity, paved roads, etc. And that's causing many companies to simply close shop. If you can do those things, we can start unlocking the economy. South Africa's got the potential. We have a heavily diversified economy, from manufacturing to mining to agriculture to services, etc. We have a skilled workforce largely, which wants to work, but we really need to see that government and business takes this crisis seriously and gives the economy the kind of support and stimulus and protection it needs to enable it to grow. But we can't sustain 4 out of 10 people being unemployed and this level of poverty and inequality rising.
Matthew, I think one of the issues you've highlighted quite a number of times in this conversation is bringing up Transnet. So much focus is on Eskom that the inefficiency and the crumbling, particularly of infrastructure at Transnet, that is bringing our ports to a complete standstill, seems to be taking place under the radar. And I don't know that actually the decay of Transnet is getting the kind of attention it deserves, given how it directly has an impact on this country's ability to not only import goods, but most importantly, to also export goods. So it really hits us on our bottom line here.
No, it is a crisis, and coupled with the crisis of load shedding, it is one of our two major obstacles to growing the economy. We know government is doing some work on it. We have met with the president, with the cabinet, and so forth. There are some work streams consisting of people from government, business, and labor has also been asked to deploy people from the unions which operate in the railway sector. That's positive, but we need to move with much greater speed. And it's not a one simple solution. It's about securing the railway networks. That means we have to deploy the police, even the defense force. We have to have a partnership with private security as well to secure a railway network. The police itself doesn't have enough personnel. We also need to make sure that we invest in the machinery that's available at our ports. It can't be our ports have this aging machinery. They're not operating as they should be operating to remain competitive. It means we must also invest in the skills of these workers at our ports so they have the capacity, the technical know-how to operate this machinery. But it's quite worrying that we're having this discussion, as you're saying, for the past 10 years plus, and we're not getting it. And if you look at our competitive index for our ports efficiency, we're falling behind not just the world, the Chinas of the world, for example, but even other African ports. You're finding increasingly many companies in Johannesburg, Gauteng, are now importing through Maputo as opposed to Durban because of our inefficiencies. Or they're looking at Walvis Bay in Namibia. You find that Mombasa and Kenya and in Morocco and so forth, and Nigeria, ports there are becoming more competitive. If we continue to allow this slide to take place, it's going to have a huge ramifications for mining, which employs 400,000 workers, for manufacturing, more than 1 million workers, for agriculture, 900,000 workers. So the capacity is there. We just need to see a simple sense of urgency from government and from business to deal with it. We have to see more resources being given to the police, the NPA, the courts, to tackle the criminal elements, to prioritize those kind of cases. But it's just simply quite worrying that we have this discussion year after year, and we don't seem to move with the speed. We always seem to wait for a crisis to envelope before we really get moving on it.
The difficulty, Matthew, is that unfortunately what has happened is that with the passage of time, COVID-19 also adding to the issues, that the problems around our infrastructure and the lack of protection has effectively meant that we have mafias that are operating in some segments of our economy that are hitting Eskom, that are hitting Transnet, and they just seem to be way ahead of our officials.
No, they are. It's quite worrying. It's quite scary how sophisticated some of these syndicates are. I think we all know how corruption has been allowed to become embedded at Eskom. I think there has been some progress. But, again, the law enforcement has to give support to Eskom because Eskom can't arrest people. Same thing with Transnet. Transnet is a rail network operator, ports operator. It doesn't have law enforcement capacity. So we really need to give more support. And we've been raising alarm bells as Cosatu that how is it that we have allowed over the past decade the police headcount to decrease from over 208,000 to 172,000. It's madness when population is rising, and of course when crime and corruption rising too. It's madness that we can expect people to pursue cases in courts when you have up to a year to 2 years backlog to get your case processed through courts. So government needs to invest more in the public services if we're to ensure that society has the quality public service that it needs to operate, that the economy needs to operate upon. We need a bit of political will. We had seen a positive thing with, for example, on the South African Revenue Service, when government invested in SARS, employed an additional 500 staff, invested in IT capacity, etc., empowered them to deal with the serious elements of corruption and criminality around tax evasion and so forth.
All right.
And as a consequence of investing in SARS and appointing competent management, we saw a huge turnaround in SARS. SARS is now beginning to be back to what it was, a decade plus ago, an embodiment of efficiency. They managed to collect an additional 94 billion rand for the fiscus, which helps government to pay down Eskom debt, to invest in social security, etc. If you can have a same approach to the police, etc., it will also help your benefits.
All right. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there for tonight.